Our first keynote features the co-founders of Cellulant Corporation. Cellulant is a leading digital payment service provider that prompts, collects, settles, and reconciles payments in real time. Njoroge and Bolaji Akinboro have grown this company from a humble payments technology startup to what is today a pan-African corporation operating in 10 markets and connecting more than 40 million customers to mobile payment solutions. The company is nimble and very proud, rightly so, of the speed and scale with which it can create tailored solutions. And all of this is based on a deep understanding of its local customers. It is this deep understanding of customers that are their superpower. Njoroge is the group CEO of Cellulant, and under his leadership, the company has grown from what started as a rough idea on the back of a napkin in 2003 to a very strong mobile commerce company. Ken has recently focused the company on a new goal of connecting more than 100 million consumers across Africa with digital payment services that are relevant to their daily lives. It is this relevance that is going to fuel the company's growth. Bolaji Akinboro is CEO of Cellulant Nigeria. He was previously responsible for a Cellulant agriculture subsidy program with the government of Nigeria. And this program dispersed over $1 billion of fertilizer and seed subsidies to rural farmers. Prior to Cellulant, he helped to set up Procter & Gamble in Ghana. He was recruited by the World Bank to head the business development unit for its Africa Virtual University project, and it is during this time that he met Ken. So please join me in welcoming Ken and Bolaji to the stage.
Good morning. Great to be here, isn't it? So Bolaji and I have a very interesting story. Interestingly so, actually, he's a pharmacy graduate, and I'm a pharmacy dropout. But I'm his boss. Life's like that. So Bolaji and I are actually entrepreneurs. So typically our day job is oftentimes setting goals that are naive, unreasonable, unworkable. And then we tirelessly and relentlessly work backwards to make them work. To save our money, to save our future, and to salvage our reputation. That's what we do every day. So, when these things work, well, they're described as bold and ingenious. When they fail, they're called out to be just what they are: naive, unworkable, unreasonable, senseless. And we've had a couple of those. We've had tons of those. I personally, to be quite honest, would love to talk about those because there's a lot of lessons there. It's typically what we call school fees in our business. But I'm on a tight leash. It's a symposium. It's a keynote speech. So I've been asked to share some lessons about the ones that did work. And I will thank Rita from the MasterCard Foundation and the Boulder Institute for giving us this opportunity to share those two. So there's two in our 13, 14 years of knowing each other and 13 or so odd years of running Cellulant that did work. One of them is Cellulant itself. The second one is the eWallet program that Bolaji ran in Nigeria. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story about Cellulant. And I'll introduce the story about the eWallet, and Bolaji will tell you a little bit about the eWallet program. That was his program. So Bolaji and I met by accident sometime in Nairobi. It was a dinner party. A former colleague of Bolaji called us out for dinner, and he wanted to start a technology company. And he basically wanted to have a couple of guys on the table and just have a chat a little bit about, what this concept would mean for Africa. And during this dinner, Bolaji was largely quiet. And so the conversation went on, and somewhere in the journey, somebody asked him about Nigeria. And so Bolaji, in his typical style, took a pause, and then he started to explain Nigeria. And as I sat across the dinner table, I could feel the workings of a great mind. So at the end of dinner, I shamelessly stretched my hand across and I said, "Hi man, can I have your business card?" And I took his business card. A couple of days later, I dropped him an email, and we stayed in touch. So a few weeks, or I think a month or so after that, we got together on just having a chat about business in Nigeria and that sort of thing. And there's a couple of nagging questions that kept nagging at us. We said, well, looks like there's a great technology opportunity. We could see that the mobile sector was beginning to take off. We knew that we couldn't play there. We didn't have the capital to do so. But we just kept being nagged by a couple of things. And so I think the one that stood out most from that coffee was the fact that we couldn't see any sort of world-class African companies. We could see that there was world-class Africans working in global corporations, but we couldn't see world-class African companies. So we said, well, is it possible to build $1 billion business in Africa, for Africa, by Africans? And so we sketched this model of Cellulant on a serviette. And we knew without too much, we just knew that this is what we were going to do. And so we set off. So a couple of weeks later, I got a meeting with a telco in Uganda. And these guys asked us to go and do a presentation, and we went to Uganda. And when we were in Uganda, I remember when I saw Bolaji in the morning, I was in horror because this guy had a cream suit on. So look, so I'm an East African, we don't do that. And I said, who on earth wears a cream suit to a business suit? But the guy, confidence, whatever it is, looked like he knew what we did. So we did, and in that sort of humble way, Cellulant was born. And in almost a similar story, and in a similar way, fast forward in 2011, and my chairman and I were on a flight for a board meeting in Nigeria, to meet Bolaji and some of our other teams there. And I was asleep, and my chairman came and tapped me, woke me up and said, "Ken, there's a gentleman here. Come and explain to him what we do." So I went across. There was a gentleman wearing a tie. And from his card, he was Nigerian. So Nigerians, cream suits, bow ties. He was wearing a bow tie. And I was standing. We were in economy class. I was standing. And as we started talking, those of you in Africa know that we are not, that felt rude. We are not socialized that way. So I went down on my knees and we started talking. And these guys started to describe this problem of agriculture in Nigeria. And the government was spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year attempting to get subsidies to small-scale farmers. Over the years, 5 to 10% of it used to get lost, and then farmers were getting poorer and poorer, and yet the government was spending more and more. And we chatted, and as I explained to him what we do, he kept asking me, so can payments technology do that? Can it do that? Can it do that? Does it do this? And after some time, I said, look, forget about the technology. Forget about all that stuff. Forget about the USSD and all these terms and whatever it is. Let's talk about what it is that you're trying to do. And he had a notebook, and I said, can we sketch? So you would guess that I have a fetish for sketching. So we started to sketch, and it was a very interesting, engaging conversation. I said, so why does the government buy seed, buy fertilizer, and attempt to distribute it? We see that there's cement, there's coke, there's a scratch card in every corner of Nigeria. Government didn't get it there. And as we sketched this thing, what we did in that period, we basically redesigned the entire ecosystem on the back of an eWallet that put the farmer at the center of an ecosystem that would be opened up for private sector participation. And as we did this, at the end of this thing, we kept asking, so how many farmers? It was estimated about 20 million farmers in Nigeria. What was their usage of fertilizer, et cetera? We'd build these numbers and that sort of thing. And at the end of that discussion, what looked to me was a very powerful business case. We could transform the lives of 20 million farmers. We could grow their productivity by almost 3 times over 6 to 7 farming seasons. And we could add a couple of billions of dollars of GDP to Nigeria. And so I looked at these numbers and I asked this gentleman, and I said, are these numbers real? Are they true? And he looked at me and he said, yes. And so he asked me, so Ken, can we do a pilot of 20,000 farmers? And I looked at him and I said, 20,000 farmers? You told me there are 20 million farmers. So whose lives are we going to change with 20,000 farmers? Then I said, if there's a couple of hundreds of billions of dollars going into this subsidy program, 90% is getting lost. Where is it going? It's going to people's pockets. And I said, do you think those guys will sit around and watch you do a pilot for 20,000 farmers? So I looked at him and I said, look, this is how this needs to go. We need to get to 3 million farmers first year. We need to get to 10 second year. We need to get to 20. Otherwise, you don't even start. And I looked at him again and I said, and if these numbers are true, God will not forgive you and I if we do nothing about it. And so this gentleman looked at me, a bit stunned, and he told me, interesting discussion, interesting conversation. I think you should meet the central bank governor. Then he says, no, I think you should meet the president. Then I got stunned. I'm saying, well, you, me, economy class, president. Doesn't compute. But to cut a long story short, I never did meet the president. Bolaji did eventually. And a couple of months later, he put us in front of a couple of ministers. And we had a 3-hour, 4-hour grilling of this concept. And at the end of that presentation, one of the ministers looked at us and said, gentlemen, it's going to November now. Rains come in February. Will all these nice things that you guys have talked about be on the ground? Because you know 2 things. We cannot delay the rains. And when we turn the wheels of policy into this direction, there's no plan B. So Bolaji and I just glanced at each other and we looked at the lady and we said, madam, we don't have a choice. And then one of the directors from one of the ministries raised up his hand and said, excuse me, sir, excuse me, madam. They won't be on the ground, we won't have procured. And the central bank governor at the time looked at him and said, you, the next year when Nigerians are starving, is it you that's going to explain to the president that 25 directors, 4 ministers, 2 governors sat in a room and debated due process? Go and get your work done. And so I walked out of that room and I looked at Bolaji and I looked at my colleagues and just said, guys, if we mess this up, we are going to jail. Then we'll die, then we go to hell. And so I looked at my chairman and I said, Chairman, I've got one assignment for you. I can get the technology done. I'm a technology guy. But there's only one guy in the world who I know can deliver this program, can put all these pieces together. That guy is Bolaji. And so Bolaji at that time was camping in Malawi, working for Plan. And at the beginning of when we set Cellulant, Bolaji and I had a pact that only one of us was going to be in the business day-to-day. So I told my chairman, I just need for you to do one thing for me. Go and convince Bolaji that it's now time to break our silly truce. He needs to come to Nigeria and he needs to deliver this program. And so Bolaji gracefully did. And a couple of weeks later, he assembled a team of 17 people from a couple of Cellulant operations. And we packed them in one apartment in Abuja. Bolaji, CEO, the deputy, ladies, young guys, older guys, Malawians, Nigerians, we packed them in one apartment. There was just no time to do fancy stuff. I don't know how he survived in 17 years, but he will tell us, with 17 guys. So Bolaji, tell us, what did you do? How was it sitting in 17 in one apartment in Abuja?
Thank you very much, Ken. You know, when you want to do large programs in Africa, you have to be very, very aggressive. And when a lot of people hear the Nigerian story, they wonder, how was it possible? And we tell them that there are certain parts of the story that many people do not know. One part of the story is that for 9 months, 17 of us were literally living together and working together. So if you look at me, maybe you might dare say you would like to work with me. But I'm not sure you would say you would like to live with me. So this is the story. Because a lot of time people talk about inclusion. But if you want to solve the problems of Africa and you want to do it quickly, it's got to be done on a large scale. So what I'll do is that I'll walk you quickly through this story. The story of the eWallet program in Nigeria, what it meant for inclusion, how lives were changed, what it meant for the future. So I'll start from the beginning, which is the context. In what context were we starting out? Ken already alluded to it, to the ambitions of the former Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, now President, African Development Bank. You see, many people don't really comprehend that Nigeria is like China in Africa. You know, almost 200 million people. Majority of the poor people in Africa, they're in Nigeria. So if you want to solve problems in Nigeria, you just go to solve the problems in a very, very big way. So the minister said to Ken at that time that we're going to go for 20 million farmers. We're going to try to change the lives of 20 million farmers. And then later he changed his mind. He said, not even 20 million farmers. I'm talking about 20 million households. Now that's a different dimension now entirely. So we sat in this room and we were imagining what 20 million people look like. I mean, even if you try to imagine what 20,000 people in a room look like, you must have really a very large imagination, not to talk of 20 million. Then he said, what we're going to do is that, unlike before, that we were spending our budgets buying farm inputs and distributing them, we're not going to do that. We're going to give money directly to the excluded, directly to farmers. So you think about it. You are talking about giving money to people, not in Kenya, not in South Africa, not in America, but in Nigeria. I mean, now this is really becoming really, really scary stuff. Then he said, not only that, there's going to be a household economic target. We know today that a typical household in the rural areas is roughly earning about $750 a year as an income. We are going to double that income in minimum 3 years. So not only do you have this distribution challenge, you now also have this household income challenge. So how is all these things going to be possible? And then when we looked at the numbers, government was really saying, look, we're going to give you $200 million to $400 million to use technology to disburse to the excluded. Now that we know the situation, at that point we didn't know. And at times, ignorance is bliss, and it was good we didn't know. Now we know that of the 14.5 million farmers that we have in what we call the National Farmer Database, less than 2 million of them have a formal bank account. The first experience of this guy with financial services is a mobile wallet. But at that time, we did not know. And it was good we did not know. Because if we knew what we knew now, maybe we would just have done like some guys, just packed their bags and walked out of the room. And what was the operating environment? Ken already alluded to it. That there was an entrenched cabal. People that were corrupt, that were determined that things were not going to work in Nigeria. They were there. There were even lots of disbelief. Because many people did not believe that government was serious. Because for 52 years, government has been promising people in the rural areas, government has been promising the excluded that your life will become better. Your life will become better. And the life never became better. And every year, government will read out these statistics. We're spending billions to help the poor. We're spending billions. But when you go and visit the poor, the only thing you see is that the poor are becoming poorer year in, year out. And the government is spending more and more and more every year. So where is the gap coming from? It's because there's leakage within the system. So it was a very difficult operating context. And then at the same time, government said, look, you know Nigeria. And if you know Nigeria, you know that Nigerians like to talk. Not only do we like to wear cream suits and bow ties, we also like to talk and argue. That you know Nigeria, you can't get anything done in this country except to use participatory approach. Because you've got to do stuff with the federal government, You've got to go to 37 state governments. You've got to go to 774 local governments. There are 95,000 villages. How on earth are you going to do participatory programming in this kind of complicated environment? The summary of this context is that it was a mission impossible. So in a sense, we were like Tom Cruise. We had to make a mission impossible now a mission possible. So what are the things that had to be done to make these things possible? Because we believe that what was done in Nigeria can be replicated in large scale across the entire African continent. Because the Nigerian story in this area is a story of really human empowerment on a really, really large scale. We always say to ourselves, myself and Ken, that between 2000 and 2010, the world witnessed what we call the Chinese miracle, the largest mass migration of people out of poverty in the world. We believe that in this decade going into the next, you are now going to see the African miracle, the second largest migration of people out of poverty into a form of empowerment. And we're going to do that if we all work together. And inclusion is a key part of the strategy. So what did he do? What did we do? The first step was KYC. And Rita alluded to that when she was speaking. Because in Nigeria, I now need to use you as the guinea pig now. When I got to Kenya in 2001, we went into a building together, me and Ken. And when we entered the building, the lady said, give us your ID card so that we can know you entered the building and you can come out. And I told her that, ID what? I am a Nigerian. I am who I say I am. And for today, I am Bolaji. And she said, no. In Kenya, you are who your ID says you are. So you think about it. Government wanted to reach 20 million people. Government had no clue who these people were. No clue. So the first step was really to build the KYC database. Who are we going to target and where are they? And this is where public, private, and development partners cooperation come into play. The government of Nigeria put in under our control 11,000 enumerators. 11,000. They put this team together in a period of like 6 weeks. Our job was to manage this entire process. So now you understand why we had to live together. Because this was not a case of 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. You close, the whole system just shuts down. So that was why we not only had to work together, we had to live together. That's why if you came to Cellulant Nigeria, you discover that we're very familiar with each other. Many people don't know it because we were formerly housemates. We were the Kardashians. So in a way, we can greet you today. Welcome to the Kardashians. So we had to build the KYC database first. The second thing was the funding arrangements. Because historically, when government had this $200 to $400 million, they paid suppliers and vendors. Now they said they're going to put it behind the platform and disburse digitally via mobile wallet to farmers. So you look at Ken, he's a Kenyan. You look at me, I'm a Nigerian. We are not even 50 years old. Will any government in his right mind give us $200 million? So the then central bank governor took a look at both of us and just said, you know what? I'm looking at these guys. If I give them this money, they might board a plane to Monaco or Hawaii. So you know what? I'm going to keep this money in the central bank. Anytime they need it for digital payment purposes, their platform integrates with mine, and then I'm monitoring them tight. Because these are young Africans. 200 million? If these guys disappear, then it's going to be a case of fraud. So we have to put in place the funding arrangement. How will the fund leave the public service into a structure that allows it to now reach the excluded? Because government-to-people payment is a critical part of the strategy for inclusion. If you don't get that part right, some other parts will not fall into place. The other component was the lending program. Because this program was taking place in a context in which there was no private sector participation in distribution, especially for agro-input. The whole system had collapsed. So the question was that, how do you now get entrepreneurs to come in? So we had to work with government together with the then CBN governor to put in place the mechanisms to ensure that private sector actors, especially the supply chain, can get access to credit. Because one part of the inclusion chain is the small businessman in a community. Can we find mechanism of getting credit to him? Can we get it to him in a way that works for him? In a way that allows him to comply with borrowing requirements without too much complications. You and I can bring collateral, but that guy in the village, even if he owns his land, he does not have any documents establishing his ownership of that. At the same time, we have to build the technology, and Ken had spoken about it. And Robert, when he was speaking, spoke about user experience. We have to get the user experience right, because you can't do fancy stuff in some of these communities. If you try to give them an app, they don't have smartphones. In fact, some of the phones that you've been using phones a long time ago, that's what you find, Nokia 3310. Sony Ericsson 1010. You know, really, really basic phones. That was what was available. So we have to come up with a user experience that allows people at the grassroots to use the technology and the platform. And then we have to build the reporting tools. And we can boast that in the history of Nigeria, there are very few programs that are as documented as this program, to the level to which it has been documented, and the levels of audits. For example, in the first year alone, there were 9 separate independent audits, because nobody in Nigeria could believe that there were some young guys. I mean, take a look at both of us. They are controlling billions of Nigerian government funds, and they didn't steal the money. This must be a lie. So, from the presidency to accountant general, everybody was doing audits upon audit, that surely there must be a scheme inside this. I mean, you know, a Kenyan and a Nigerian. In fact, somebody said a partnership between a Kikuyu and a Nigerian must be a dangerous partnership. So all these things we had to do was with one overall objective, to bring life back to rural areas, to bring life back to the excluded. And what was the impact? I want to talk first about the inclusion impact. Now that we know, and we have a global view of the statistics, because this is one of the largest databases on the African continent, we are adding data at the rate of close to like 30 gig every 3 days, because all kind of behavioral data are coming into the platform every day. We don't even have time to even analyze the data. And this is the inclusion facts. As at the beginning, only 800,000 farmers had access to a bank account that they were using. But 2 million of them had a bank account. So 1.2 million accounts were really inactive accounts. Fast forward 3 years later, 7 million farmers have used the mobile wallet consecutively in 2 farming seasons to access farm inputs. You know, this is very, very impressive for Africa. You know, and think about it. This was taking place in 95,000 villages, including where there were bombings, including where terrorists were running around. Because some people just cannot leave their community. They have to stay there. And we cannot neglect them because there are physical dangers. We have to bring services to them there. Because we worked with a government that said, I don't care. I engage you to deliver services. If you are going to die in the duty, all well and good, I'll send a card to your family to say, you know, well done, thou good and faithful Nigerian servant. So the inclusion agenda, very interesting. So in Nigeria right now, we can boast that there are 7 million farmers who have used a mobile wallet twice and now thrice, 3 consecutive farming seasons. If we include everybody that has used the platform just once, it's about 9 to 9.5 million. The second thing is the income. The income of the farmer, household income, moved from $750 to $1,800 in this 3-year period. In terms of the macroeconomy, Nigeria was importing, as at the time we commenced this program, close to $10 to $12 billion worth of food every year, year in, year out. By 2012, that bill crashed to $4 billion. And to show you the power of this program, because of elections in 2015, that there has been delays in kicking off the program, Nigeria's food import bill has started rising. Simply because the massive food production of many years now has been consumed. There are delays in kicking off this program because we've had a break of like 4 or 5 months due to elections. A new government has come in, we had to settle. And that delay alone, we are saying it now, food import bill now, this year alone has already climbed by $2 billion. Simply because rural people are not able to now get access to the financing and the tools they need to grow more. And then in terms of food supply, the government set a target that in 4 years will increase food supply in Nigeria by 21 million metric tons. In 2 years, the government met and exceeded that target. Nigerian farmers grew 52 million metric tons of food. This is really, really a significant achievement. And if we did not bring these people into the visible ecosystem, that would not be possible. Rita mentioned about making people visible. The question is that what do we do with the invisible? So this work that we did in Nigeria allowed us now to have a framework for Africa regarding making people visible. Visible to insurance companies, visible to fast-moving consumer goods, visible to development partners, visible to everybody. And then I'll talk quickly and run quickly through the challenges, just so that you get a perspective. The major challenges that we face with this program are really two. Really, one is the people ask me, what is the major challenges? And I tell them, it's not technology, it's people. It's people, behavior. Because when government said we are going to change the way we do business, Nigerians did not believe. And development partners in Nigeria were just wondering, this is just rubbish. You mean you want to change the behavior of a large country like this? Start with small pilots. In fact, I remember one particular international development partner who said, at the beginning, Honorable Minister, that's saying to the now President of African Development Bank, that I thought you were mad, but now I'm a believer. Because at the beginning, you take a look at where I sit. I'm running a program in this country for 10 years. My program is only covering 3 states. And then you come, you've never worked in Nigeria for many years, and you say you're going to do this across the entire country. You're going to do it everywhere. You sit where I sit. Do you expect me to take you serious? I'm not going to take you serious. So it took time to change behavior, and you know what it takes to change behavior. The second major challenge we are facing now is what we call the transition arrangements. And we can boast now that in the history of Nigeria, to start a program in one government and successfully transition it into another government is literally impossible. This is the first time that a program from one government, an opposition government, was successfully moved into a new government. And it happened because, for once, government at the national level can see impact. Impact that is visible, impact that is measurable, impact that can be challenged. And that's why we always tell people, international development partners, we're available for audits anytime. So finally, what's the next step? Where are we going? Beyond financial inclusion, we are talking about economic inclusion now. Because the fundamental question is resolving the issues of poverty once and for all. So this platform and this technology now, we've taken it to the next level. It's now a digital marketplace where the excluded can get access to all forms of services. We just finished a pilot for some countries it will be a large pilot. For Nigeria, it's a very small pilot with cassava farmers. And what do these farmers do? These farmers were able to access about $6 million worth of loans. They were able to access about $4 million of government grants. They were able to do all this digitally. They were able to buy cassava stems, to buy fertilizer, to buy agrochemicals. They were able to connect themselves to an outgrower. That is somebody that buys their farm inputs from them. And in the next couple of months now, when they start harvesting, they'll start getting warehouse receipts. Warehouse receipts are like coupons that are redeemable in a microfinance bank for cash. So we are making it now a digital marketplace that is an end-to-end marketplace. And we are now structuring the network for growth. Because we dare say that in complicated contexts like Nigeria, we are the only guys that know how things are going to work. Because we describe a market like Nigeria as organized chaos. That it's chaos, but there's order inside that chaos. There is a logic to the chaos. So maybe you've been to Nigeria and you wonder that what kind of country is this? I'm going to tell you that there's order in that madness. Lots of order. So this is what we are doing. Right now, we've got the agri-agent network components in place. Right now, we started plugging a microfinance bank and microfinance institutions into the platform. And the reason is that we've made an observation that the closest person to the excluded is really a savings group. And those savings group, when you begin to empower them with digital technology, you begin to change the dynamics of life in this area. So begin to plug in that aspect. And then we now began to plug in fast-moving consumer goods into the network. Because in every community, there's somebody that's selling a bar of soap. That guy selling a bar of soap can be a financial inclusion agent. That guy can be like a bank to that person. That guy can bring services to that person. So we began to scale the network. So what's my conclusion? In the next couple of years, when you hear that we're the largest, I won't say bank, digital service and payments company on the African continent, don't be surprised. That's the game we are playing. Thank you.
So one parting shot. put this in context, at the time when Cellulant started this program, we were a $4 million business. By the time the government eventually got around to contracting us, we had spent about $600,000. Very reckless thing to do. Don't try it at home. But when I look at this room, I see people who control billions of dollars in balance sheets, hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets going into digital inclusion. When I listen to this story, and every time I listen to it, it defines to me what the new normal is. When I look at this setting, I see similar settings. I see lots of coffee shops, lots of notebooks, lots of serviettes, lots of places to sketch. And I hope that in these 3 days that we're here, that we spend some time to sketch some ideas. And here's our next naive idea. We think that it takes, when I look at the economics of the program in Nigeria, it took us about $1 to create this transformation per farmer. And when we look at this model of using financial services and payments to basically transform agriculture, we think those economics will translate into power, they will translate into water, they will translate into education, they will translate into health. So the hypothesis that I want you guys to do over the next few days is to say, look, we think that it possibly costs $1 to create that sort of magnitude of transformation for every one of those problems. And I think God will not forgive you and I if we do nothing about it. Thank you very much.